Welcome now to section 2, and I've entitled this A New Way of Thinking, and the subtitle is Don't Try Harder, Just Change for the Better. So here we go, lecture 2, and this is called The Complete Life. I think it's important not to let our lives just drift along every day and hope that something works out. You have to have a much better plan than something, because if you don't, you'll probably end up with anything. The trouble is, there are so many teachers, preachers, advisors, counsellors, salespersons, all calling for your attention, but who do you listen to? You have to be careful, otherwise you can end up going down a path that leads to nowhere or a dead end. Success is not found in the things we own, but in who we are, our identity. Not by what we have bought or how large our bank account is, because those things are also subject to change. And if who we are is linked to what we have, then if what we have goes away or changes, then we also will always change as well, but not for the better. Identity is within and not based upon some external problem being right or solved. If you or I are waiting till everything around us is right or perfect, you could be waiting for the rest of your life. The reason being that there are too many circumstances outside of our control. But the things that we can control are within us, because we can choose what thoughts to think. Nobody has the power to change that. We have to create that kind of thinking within ourselves. Nobody is going to do it for you. This is where the completion of a person starts, with the thinking or the thought process a person allows to go through them on a daily basis. And if you allow and control the right thoughts that you think, then your life will change in a very dramatic way. This is not all about positive thinking, because some people like to try and think positive and ignore the reality going on around them, and that's silly. You can't have a flat tyre on a car and pretend it doesn't exist and carry on driving. That's going to stop you moving forward in the direction you need to go. In the same way, you can't keep thinking the same thoughts you have been for a long time and hoping for a different result. Not going to happen. The way to improve is to examine the current thought processes that you have and adjust it accordingly. When some of us try to change the way we think, we put the effort towards achieving some external goal. For example, I want to have a better job in 3 months' time, or I want to be earning £100,000 in the next year, or something along those lines. But the mistake we normally make is to ignore the thinking that will go on to make those goals happen. Or to put it another way, if you don't work on yourself, then it will be so much more difficult for those goals to become reality. The first thing to work on is you. You are the most important aspect of whatever you want to do or achieve or to get to in life, because you have to be happy with you first of all. And then the other things will fall into place, but you must condition yourself first. The way most of us has been taught, or whoever we listen to, is to be a goal-striving, go-getting kind of person, steaming ahead at 100 miles an hour and don't stop until you get your hands on what you want. Personally, I think there's a much easier way of living than this, because the way I've just mentioned leads to a very stressed out kind of life with no satisfaction. And although you can achieve great things, it's not fulfilling to the person who's doing all this. Have you ever achieved something in your life, and when you got there and finally laid your hands on what you were after, and then you thought, is this it? Most of us, after arriving there, think that what we need is now something else to go after. So if I've made $1 million, now I need 2 million. And that kind of cycle is very hard to get off, because we are all so driven these days, and we are doing it without questioning if what we are doing is actually very helpful to us as a person. I'm all for passion and motivation and progress, but at what cost? Have you ever stopped or slowed down a little to reflect and ask yourself why you are doing this? Have you recently took a break and start to look a bit deeper how your life is going for you, and if you're happy or content with it? Life can be to some people just an accumulation of things, or the respect of an employer because you're making them plenty of money. But is it giving you a quality of life? Have you ever been in a traffic jam early one morning with all the other commuters all doing the same thing, rushing out the door, some even having breakfast in their car, and we think this is normal? Start to question what you're doing. Don't just accept someone else's opinion. that this is what you have to do in order to pay the bills and make money, and life has to be like this until you retire. Who sold you that plan? The late Steve Jobs, CEO of Apple, once said, "For the past 33 years, I have looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And when the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something." Now, what that something is might be different to all of us, but I do know it starts with asking yourself some questions that need to be answered, rather than just going with the flow just because that's what everybody else does. What other people do is in absolutely nothing to do with you, and how they want to live is entirely up to them, and you have your own choices to make about your own life. If you don't start to think and make decisions about your life and future, somebody else will make them for you, whether you like it or not. Those people are called employers or governments, and these two things are what a lot of us complain about because they don't treat us right. But stop the blame game and start to take back some control of your life by realizing the responsibility starts with you. Nobody is going to hand it to you on a plate with no work on your part. That's being called lazy, and too many of us are very lazy in our minds, can't be bothered to take the time and plan their life, and especially when you receive the rewards that are on the table. But when you go the extra mile, you start leaving the crowd behind.